Hello and welcome to another episode of This Expat Life. And today I am calling in from the digital studio in Rio, and I have another guest in the studio who I'm really excited about because we're going to talk about a topic that is very common for expats to struggle with. I'm talking to Sarah, and Sarah moved from Hamburg to London in 2019 to live with her fiance. And in the first 2 years, she had zero friends, felt lonely, isolated, and low. This is a situation I guess we've all been in at some point in our expat life. And when Sarah found out about coaching and applied all the tools that she learned about, Sarah's life changed. And now she's actually helping other expats who feel lonely and isolated to make friends and create connections in their lives so that they can overcome their loneliness and live a more fulfilled life. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you're here because we've been talking to each other on LinkedIn for a little bit, or at least following each other. And I saw
Yeah,
you a while ago, actually, already on Instagram, and I thought, oh, what Sarah does, I need to speak to her because this topic is so relevant for my coachees and for other expats. Because at some point, we
yeah,
with finding new friends, maintaining friendships from back home, and even maintaining friendships that we created abroad when we move again. So I'm really glad that you're here. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you also call yourself the only expat friendship coach. Is that correct?
yeah, yes, yeah. So I haven't come across anyone who is a friendship coach for expats, so I'm claiming to be the only one.
Yeah.
Unless anyone finds another person, please send them my way. But yeah, so it's something I think friendship coaching generally is something that isn't very well spread. Like not many people are aware that there are actually people out there who can help you with their friendships. And then obviously expat friendship coaching is quite niche, on top of, just the general quite niche friendship coaching. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely something that isn't very well known. And so this
Yeah.
is why it's amazing to be able to speak to you and to be able to spread the word and actually make people aware that there is that sort of help out there for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. I can't wait to dive into our conversation. But before we start, you moved to London, and are you currently calling in from London as well?
I am, yes, I am calling in from London, just outside of London actually, but yeah, I am.
Yeah, nice. And can you share a little bit about your story? Because I already mentioned it in introduction, but what were some of the tools that you applied to find new friends
Yeah.
and to go from feeling so isolated and lonely to having a thriving social network, I assume now?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, or like you mentioned before, so when I moved abroad, I moved here for my partner, and that was the only person I knew in the whole of England. So it was very lonely in the beginning, and especially when my partner, who grew up here, kind of socialized with his, people, with his family, and I didn't join sometimes. It was very isolating experience to be kind of, stuck at home and not having anyone to talk to or to go out with.
Yeah.
And then I found coaching, and the tools that I've applied were, first of all, to just realize that there isn't anything wrong with me. So I think really when I moved here and I thought, oh, I want to make friends, but then there were so many barriers in the way of me actually going out and meeting people. So some of them were things like I don't think I am friendly enough or funny enough or, good enough for people to like me. And I'm different. I grew up, in Germany, not here in England. So that means that we won't have many things in common. So there were all of these kind of doubts or thoughts that I had about me not being likable or not being good kind of friend material to people,
Mhm.
um, which obviously wasn't the case. And through coaching, I was really able to, first of all, actually realize that this was what was going on for me, that actually I had these thoughts. Because sometimes when we are in our brain, in our world, in our day-to-day life, we feel like, oh, there's something going on, but I don't really know what it might be. Like we feel some, resistance or something, but we can't pinpoint where it's coming from. So that was one thing that coaching really helped me to do, to become aware of what was the the main cause of these feelings.
Yeah.
And then obviously to work on them and to really understand that even if I haven't, even if I didn't grow up here in England, that doesn't mean that there aren't any parallels or any things that might have in common with other people that I can relate to. So really breaking down all of these thoughts really helped me to understand my brain is just feeding me, thoughts and things that aren't true and that really, really don't serve me to
Yeah.
go out and make friends. So that was one thing. And then really what I worked on a lot and what I work on with my clients a lot now is to help them to really accept themselves for who they are and not just accept themselves, but really appreciate themselves for who they are. But with all of the, ups and downs and with everything that comes with it. But if you don't do that, then what happens is that you want to make friends because you think that, for example, if I have a friend, then that means that I'm likable, for example, right? So I need them to do something for me. Like, and that's an unconscious process, right? So that isn't like we consciously think, oh, I need a friend because then I think I'm likable. But it's that unconscious desire that we have. So when we work on really accepting ourselves beforehand, then we can make friends from a really unattached place and we can actually create a really healthy friendship with other people where we don't need anything from them or don't use them, quote unquote, to make us feel good. So that is another thing that I've really worked on myself to really accept and give myself everything I need ahead of time and then make friends. And the other thing, when you do this, when you really are in a place where you accept yourself and love yourself and appreciate yourself, if you then go out and meet someone who rejects you in any way, maybe ghosts you after your first meetup or something like that, you won't take it personally as much potentially as you would if you weren't in this space. So that's a really, really important part.
I love this, Sarah, because everything you say, I'm realizing, oh, I do the same thing with my coachees, but just focus on other topics. But
Yeah.
I so wholeheartedly agree with everything you say, especially those thoughts that we have that they aren't often true, or you can at least choose your own thoughts and you can choose more
Yeah.
serving thoughts. And it applies to friendships as well, because actually I've seen this with some of my coachees and also some of my students from my courses that we had a really open talk one day about how they find it difficult to meet new friends, but even to go into a room of strangers, um, and really
Mhm.
present themselves as someone to talk with, because they had
Yeah.
we dove into their thoughts and then they realized, oh, actually, because what I'm thinking when I'm entering that big room with strangers is I'm not interesting enough to talk to anyone,
Mhm.
or like who would
Yeah.
want to talk to me? And so the energy that they then send out is already like, yeah, yeah, I'm probably not good enough to talk, and don't come too close. And of course, then it's going to be difficult to make new friends because that's not the energy or the approach or the position that you want to have in making new friends. And we are often so not aware of these thoughts. They happen unconsciously. They're so deeply rooted within us. So it's great that I think it's great that you're working on them with your clients. And also,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, also the accepting yourself who you really are. I think this is key in life for anything. And I had actually never thought about it when it came to friendships. So I
Mm.
saw it in relationships. I saw it in my own life. Like the more you can accept yourself, the lighter everything feels because it's all within you anyway. There's no pushing away. There's no hiding. There's no trying to make things look better. It's just who you are. But I never thought about it with friendships. But you're so right. If you can accept yourself, you don't need to get anything out from the other person.
Yeah.
Even when we don't consciously try to do that, it's still within us. So that is really.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how you practically work on that latter part of accepting yourself in those friendships?
Yeah. So I think that first of all, like I said, is the awareness. Like the awareness is key. So finding out what you are thinking. And one exercise that I am doing regularly and that I'm offering to my clients to do is to do something called a thought download, where you just literally take a piece of paper, a pen, and you set yourself an alarm for like 5 or 10 minutes, and you just write down everything that comes to your mind. And you can, use some prompts maybe to guide you. So for example, if I think about myself, this is what comes to mind. Or if I would describe myself, this is how I would describe myself. Or I think I am dot dot dot, and everything that you think comes to your mind. And the purpose of this is to be really honest with yourself and not to edit anything out or to think about it twice. Like, just write down what comes to your mind, because that will be an honest reflection of what is actually going on in your mind. And if you are doing this exercise, I can tell you already that there will be some things that you probably won't like, and some things that you probably have some thoughts about and some judgments on. But again, the purpose of this is to become aware of what's going on and to be truthful with ourselves, to see, okay, there is a thought in here in my brain that I am not interesting. And I don't want to think that. And I know that this might not be true, but this is something that it is in my brain, hidden somewhere maybe, but it is there. So we need to be really honest with ourselves to find out what is there. And then we can work on improving these thoughts. So you can choose one of the thoughts that you might have written down. So for example, I'm not interesting enough for people to speak to me. And then obviously the goal is to get to a thought, to a place where you believe that you are interesting or that you have something interesting to share. But the way to get there is not to all of a sudden, jump to, I am the most interesting person in the world, because your brain is not going to believe that, because where your brain is now is at, I'm not interesting at all. So we need to find little step-by-step thoughts that can help you to get to the end result. So if you are currently at, I'm not interesting at all, then you might can access, and you need to check in with yourself how that lands for you, and if it actually, the way it works is if it creates a different emotion in your body. So if you feel like, if I think I'm not interesting, like if that's my truth, I feel maybe, I don't know, defeated, or, I feel shy maybe to say something. So if I want to go to, I'm the most interesting person in the world, one thought that you can maybe try on the way to that result is maybe, I can think of something interesting to say, or I might have something interesting to say. So really just changing it slightly, changing maybe one word or adding one word to it might get you closer to the end result and might create a slightly different emotion. And maybe it is just a little bit less shy than before, but that's a win already, right? So any progress on that can help. And then it's just a matter of really practicing those new thoughts, believing in them. So if I now choose, I can come up with something interesting to say, let's think about what is some evidence that this is true, and then really finding out, oh, actually, at the party like 2 weeks ago, I did come up with something interesting to say. So you can make a list of evidence, like, why is this true? Where has it happened? Why could that be true? Because someone can come up with something interesting. So it's really just finding those kind of letter thoughts that will guide you to that main big goal, and then finding evidence along the way to make it really believable and helpful for you.
Yeah, this is great. This is exactly also the work I do with coaches on slowly changing their thoughts, and also what I use for myself to believe that I'm a good entrepreneur, for example, and that it's safe to
Yeah,
show myself on social media. This is applicable for any part of your life, and I love how you approach friendships that way as well. I was
amazing.
really
So
curious.
interesting.
Yeah, I was really curious about something, because you mentioned that you moved to London or the UK for your partner, and that you were really
Mhm.
lonely, um, and that you basically had his circle. But did you also have a job when you moved there? And if so, how did it work out for you finding friends in your professional networks?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I moved here without a job. So when I moved here, I did have a job and an apartment in Germany, which I rented out and I put my job on hold because I only wanted to trial out life in England for 8 months. But then I moved here, everything worked out much better than, or better than I thought. So I moved here. I didn't have a job in the beginning. I did find a job after a month or two. And it was interesting because, like you said, I did have my fiance's kind of circle of friends and family. And that was an interesting topic because I never felt like they were my friends. So that was a big topic for me as well, to really integrate in that circle and allow them to like me, like allow them to actually be my friends, because I put that boundary up because I told myself, well, they are his friends and not my friends, so they can't be my friends, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of the job, so I did find a job, and my former job was actually really, really helpful in terms of me connecting with people and finding friends after I've started working on myself. So in the beginning, I was still in this mindset of, basically no one likes me and I can't make any friends. So the results was that I didn't speak to many of my colleagues. I was quite isolating myself at work. I didn't make any effort into really engaging or making any contact, making any friends. But then since kind of starting to work on these things and shift certain kind of mindsets and beliefs that I had, I was able to engaged and actually made a really, really good friend at work, um, which was, yeah, really lovely. And really just by me opening myself up and being courageous and taking that step of, okay, I'm just going to talk to her and see how it goes. And I'm just going to message her and see how it goes. So, putting yourself out there, knowing that whatever the reaction will be, you're going to be fine and you have your own back, really helped me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's a good addition. Um,
Mm,
Maybe do you have also some practical tips for people who are, well, let me apply it also to myself. And I know this is also often the most difficult phase in expat life when it comes to friendships.
yeah.
I just moved abroad to Rio, and I used to find myself in other times abroad saying yes to everything because I thought I need to make new friends. I need to create a social life. I know how important it is. So I'm just saying yes. I'm an ambivert, which means that I get my energy mostly from being alone at home and not always from big groups of people or acquaintances, I would say.
Mhm.
So nowadays, I'm already taking it much easier. So I still say yes to things, but I schedule them a little bit more at the end of the afternoon, early evening. So I have the final hours of the day to myself. So I know myself and I apply that in how I find friends. But do you have any tips for people who are in this first phase of their expat life? They know they need to create a new social circle. They feel lonely, just like you felt before, but there's overwhelm
Mhm.
because everything is new and busy. um, do you have any suggestions on how to navigate this, but also practical tips like where can you find friends and how can you find the right friends also?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think thank you for sharing that as well. And I think your approach is perfect and exactly, what I would really recommend is to find out, like, in loads of different areas, you need to really be aware of who you are. So finding out, how do you feel energized, or what makes you feel energized? So is it, if you are spending time with other people, you go away and you're like, oh my God, this was amazing. Like, I can do all of the things now and I feel amazing and energized and great. Or is it, I love spending time on the couch reading a book after work or something, and that really energizes me. So finding out, and you might be in the middle as well. So that it isn't like black or white sometimes. Um, so finding out really what just make you feel energized, what do you enjoy doing, and then act accordingly. And it is really finding a good balance that works for you individually. There isn't a kind of general rule that, we can all apply. I think it is really what works for you. And then you need to be able to feel confident and trust yourself to know yourself and to do the right thing for you. And like you just said, what works for you. And so you plan accordingly. And so if you listen to this and you feel quite overwhelmed in this current state of life, completely normal, I would always recommend for you to find a good balance. So if you think, I've got so much on my plate now, but I also want to make friends, then think about what is maybe something that is the priority at the moment. Like maybe there are some, like finding an apartment might be more urgent than making friends. So really understanding that you can prioritize certain things. There are certain things that are more urgent than others, and other people, other things can wait, or other people can wait. So to be able to allow yourself not to having to do everything at the same time, I think is quite important as well. And to just trust yourself that you will get to that one thing later on. In terms of making friends, how and where and what kind of your ideal people, again, what matters is that you know yourself. So for me, sorry, for me, I really enjoy, personal development. I enjoy yoga, I enjoy walks and nature. So I know this about myself. So if I want to make friends, then I would look at like in places where other people who might have similar interests would hang out. So there could be, for example, a walking group, a hiking group, I've got a dog, maybe there's a dog walking group or yoga classes. I wouldn't necessarily look into groups of people that go to a museum or that go out every Friday night to go for a party or whatever. So really know yourself and then get creative and find out where you can meet people. I do have a resource as well, that you can find on my Instagram, where you can, it's a PDF document, a PDF guide listing several places where you can meet people. So that might be if you are in this stage now where you think, I'd love to, but I just don't know where to start. You can have a look, download that, and maybe get some inspiration there. And also not to not, if you want to make friends and you're currently already very overwhelmed, don't make making friends another thing on your to-do list that overwhelms you even more, right? Make it something light, make it something fun, maybe include it into something that you already do. Because the thing is, we always think we have to do something extraordinary to make friends, but actually, really, any contact with a person can be, you making a new friend. So it can be as easy as, I'm gonna have a chat with my local coffee shop lady and actually get to know her. Maybe we can go out for, we find out we both are into yoga and we go out to yoga together. So it can be really easy. It doesn't have to be that big thing.
Yeah, I love how you approach that. I really agree with it. And if it's okay, I'll link the PDF also in the show notes so people can
Yeah,
download
sure.
it. And I do have a few things to add because I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said.
Yeah.
Personally, I also found like you said, don't make finding friendships another to do. Like if you're already overwhelmed, you need to know what to prioritize. I also believe that if you
Yeah.
are an extrovert and you do need that social contact to recharge your battery, but you're just overwhelmed with work and finding a house, think creatively and ask yourself, okay, how can I still fulfill my social need without spending
Mm.
every evening away? So, what is the minimum that I need, and how could I get it in a more creative way? I think it's good to challenge yourself also to think in another way how you can still meet your needs. And maybe in that
Mm.
overwhelmed phase, it is more difficult for extroverts to meet their needs because they need a lot of social contact. Whereas I think you're also a bit more an introvert. uh, we
Mhm.
we are maybe a bit easier because we can just spend the evening home alone reading a
Yeah.
book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that I also found, or two things actually, is that I'm a member of Girl Gone International. This is a global network
Mhm.
of women around the world. And in The Hague, where I lived before, they're pretty active. And I still see so often people writing, "Hey, I just arrived. Who wants to go for coffee with me?" But that group, it
Yeah.
has women from 18 till 80 from all countries with all kinds of interests. So whenever I see that, I always feel like, yeah, I don't feel like I'm being talked to or talked at. And so
Mm.
whenever you can make, if you want to go for a coffee with strangers, be more specific on who you want to meet. I feel it's just like
Yeah.
dating or on the apps. If you see that profile of a guy or a girl who says like, oh, I like going out for food, I like dogs, I like hanging out with friends. basically this person likes everything. It is very
Yeah.
vanilla and you don't feel that spark. You don't feel like, oh, this is the right guy for me. It's just like, okay, it's a nice guy. But if you find someone who loves hiking and hates going to the museums and um, loves to read a book with you and make food at home and also loves that weird TV show that you watch, you're right away like, oh yeah, this is me as well. And we could do those things together. And I believe it's the same with friendships. So if you are looking on the internet to find new friends, be specific. And it's probably going to mean that you're going to reject like a few people, like they're going to feel like, okay, you're not the right person for me. But for other people, you're going to be the person to hang out with. And those connections, I believe, are the ones that you want to have. So that is another
Yeah.
thing I would add. And also my own experience, I reached out on Girl Gone International one day about like, hey, I just quit my job and I started my own business. Does anyone want to hang out? Because I miss having colleagues. And no one in that group had written that before. So I assumed there was very little interest. Within 1 week, we had a group of 35 women. And so if I hadn't reached out, like no one, I wouldn't have found anyone because everyone was waiting
Yeah.
for someone else to say that basically. So don't assume that if you don't find your group or the thing that you want to do that it isn't there or that there's no interest. Just express yourself and what you want, and you I think you'll be surprised with how many people will respond to you and how quickly you will find your tribe.
Yeah, I love that and completely agree. Yeah, I think, finding out who you are and then really presenting that into the world by, for example, being very specific when you put something out there, yeah, great advice. And I think that will, like you said, really help you to find those people that you are looking for, not these, vanilla sort of wishy-washy kind of things. So completely agree with that. And the second point that you said, if you don't maybe I think sometimes people maybe, they live in a more remote sort of area and they think, oh, well, there isn't anything about, where I can meet people. Maybe create something, like you said, because you might be surprised who is actually interested in that and didn't have the courage to maybe put it out there in the world. So
Yeah,
yeah, completely agree.
nice. Yeah, good addition. So be the leader basically is always what I say.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe to round this interview up, like I would also love to talk to you about maintaining old friendships, the ones that you have back home, or perhaps with friends that you met abroad and then you moved again and they're still somewhere else. How do you, well, first of all, what is your experience with maintaining these older friendships and how do you maintain them?
Yeah, that is such an important question. So it is, I just want to say, friendships change. And I think we all have to realize that and normalize that, because if we don't, we might end up having very unrealistic expectations that really just disappoint us, or that hurt us along the way. And that's not to say that every friendship changes to the extent that we don't stay in touch anymore, but I just want to normalize that there will be changes, especially if we maybe move from our home country somewhere different. We will have a different sort of life, the expat life, and people back home will not have that same experience. So we will change, they will change, the friendship changes. And I think that is normal and that is to be expected, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean that we can't stay in touch and we can't stay connected. So for me, my friends back in Germany, I still very much feel connected to them, but that isn't because we see each other every day or we speak every day or, we do anything extraordinary, but it is because of me putting in the effort to feel connected to them no matter what. So I really actively work on creating that connection. And because if we think about a friendship or a connection, a friendship really is just the thoughts that we have about someone, right? It's not like me, you, and then this weird thing in between. It is me, my thoughts about you, and you thoughts about me. And that is what a connection is, what a friendship is. And so if we think about it that way, then we can really influence how our friendship, how our connection is with someone, because we can influence how we think about that person. So I feel very connected because I think about how much these people have gone through with me, how well they know me, how much we have experienced together. And even though I've been living abroad for 5 years now, we haven't had, weekend trips away or whatever as much as we used to. I still choose to focus on the things that we have together or have had together that still make me feel connected to them. Um, and another friend, actually the work friend that I've mentioned before, she was an expat, or she is, well, no, she was an expat, and she moved back to her home country. And that was sort of in the beginning of when I started really working on these things myself. And what happened really was that she moved and we really lost touch, and we kind of lost that connection. And I think it depends also on how deeply connected you are with a person before these big changes happen, like moving abroad or moving away. Because if you've just met that person maybe 2, 3 weeks ago and then they move, the likelihood of that create connection, being maintained to the same extent might be relatively low. So I think it depends also how connected you are. But another thing to add, because I see that happening a lot, is people, they might move abroad and they know, I'm gonna move again in 6 months. So where's the point in me, making friends and going out now?
Yeah.
And I hear that a lot and I understand their way of thinking. But what I just want to offer, if this is you or if you know anyone, it really connection happens in an instant, right? Like if I meet someone and I have a conversation, I don't even have to speak to them. I can feel connected to them knowing things about them. So maybe I found them on a friendship app like Bumble for friends or whatever. I saw their profile, like you said earlier, because they were so detailed, I already feel connected to them.
Yeah.
So I meet up with them and I maybe have a really nice chat. And even it depends what you want to focus on. Do you want to focus on, yes, I will leave in 6 months, or do you want to focus on, but we will have 6 months to have a really great time together? And so don't ever use the circumstances you're in against yourself, but actually use them for what you want to achieve. And if it is connection, then go out and feel connected. You get to feel connected by choosing specific thoughts about someone. And that is always accessible to you, no matter what the time frame is, or what circumstance you're in.
I love this. And it's actually something that I heard a lot from the people that I got sometimes Instagram messages or coachees who said, like, oh, I've been living here for 6 years. I had great friends, but now everyone moved. And I'm just so
Yes.
tired of investing in
Yeah.
relationships. It's funny because I couldn't really relate to that because I never had that problem. Maybe because I was the one who was always moving earlier.
Mm.
But also, I feel like my friendships aren't limited to location. So I have the
Yeah.
majority of my friends live abroad, not in the Netherlands. And sometimes that can be difficult, like when you move back in the pandemic, you know. But I really see myself as a global person and my friendships are everywhere. And it just means that when I'm not in the same location, the frequency is just a little bit lower, but they're still my friends. And I don't
Yeah.
feel defeated in finding new friends. I recognize my needs, and maybe there is some like, oh, are they going to leave me again? Maybe that would come up at some point, but I would overcome that and change my thoughts, like you
Mm.
say, and really not. I love how you say, like, not use let the circumstances be against you in a way, but actually use them to your
Yeah.
advantage. I think this is applicable to anything in life. Like you are dealt with certain cards in life, and you can't always change them, and that's just how it is. But don't let them,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, work against you in some way.
Yeah. It always depends on what story you tell yourself, right? You can tell yourself a nightmare about something, or a fairy tale, and you really get to choose what story you tell yourself about the life that you're having at the moment. And yes, just to add one more thing, when you said many people experience that, right? Is that constant, I put in the effort, I put in the time, I am vulnerable, I build something, and then they leave me.
Yeah.
And if that, like, I understand it can be draining, it can feel like I'm burnt out creating connection. But at the same time, it's us again choosing to think like, okay, once they move, nothing is gonna I don't feel any connection there out of my life. And that isn't the case. That
No.
doesn't need to be the case. Like you said, you have friends in different locations. That is possible. So it isn't like they're gone forever and that was a complete waste of time,
No,
because it
exactly.
wasn't.
You will reconnect somewhere in another part of the world again, and then it will probably be the
Yeah.
same. had enough experiences to share beforehand. And also, I like what you say about the story that you tell yourself. Like in this case, I think the people that I spoke with, they told the stories like, "Oh, it's not worth investing in this because they're gonna leave me again, and what's the point?" But you can also say,
Yeah.
"Okay, I get the chance to meet wonderful new people and to add them to my network. Like I'm really excited to
Yeah.
start there." And that's already, like you said, such a different emotion attached to it.
Yeah.
So I really like what you say about changing your story, um, and how important this is also for friendships.
Yes. Absolutely.
Sarah, I could talk to you for an hour more because this is a topic I
Yeah.
really enjoy, and I really, really appreciate your perspective on it because it really resonates with how I work as well. Um,
Yeah.
I always ask my interviewees one final question before we end the conversation, and that is, what is your number one hack to make living abroad easier?
Yeah. So what I would offer is to trust yourself. I
Mm.
think trusting ourselves to find out who we are, what we want, and what is important to us, and trusting ourselves to try out to fulfill that in many different ways, and trusting ourselves that the path that we choose, the actions that we take, the decisions that we make are right for us in that moment. And if they don't feel right, to work on making them right, right? There is never a right decision, it's always just a decision we make, right? So if you get to trust yourself, I think you will have so much more possibilities and abilities to enjoy your life as opposed to doubting yourself and doubting whatever you do all the time, because you will never get to a stage where you actually feel fulfilled and where you really enjoy your life, because you will always doubt, was that the right thing? Was it the right time? Did I do this right? So yeah, trusting yourself.
I love this one. Thank you for sharing. If people want to know more about you and how you work, or maybe start working with you, where can they find them? Sorry, where can they find you?
Yeah. So they can find me on Instagram. I'm probably most active on Instagram, which is friendships.abroad. And they can also have a look on my website, which is friendshipsabroad.net. And you will find all the information, all the links. I offer a free consultation call to have a chat and discuss how we could work together. So you can book one. All the links are on Instagram on my website. So yeah,
Wonderful. I will also add the link to the PDF you mentioned before to the show notes so people
yeah,
can download it directly. And Sarah, thank you so much for all the nuggets of wisdom that you shared, the different approach to connection, to friendships, and for the practical tips also that people can start applying right away in their expat life. I really enjoyed this call,
yeah.
and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.